Hello out there. We are about 5 minutes until we are going to officially start our Global Regions Review. And we'll see who all we get joining us today. So we're probably on about a 3-minute lag, but hopefully we'll really kick that up. And if you are interested, please add your information to the chat that should be available to you. And also, if you are having an issue with the chat, please feel free to add your comments below, and I will be doing my best to get to both of those things. I've got a lot. I'm doing this all on my own, so I'm a little bit in lots of different places. So again, we're going to be starting actually right now in about 4 minutes. 4 minutes, we're going to start our official Global Regions Review. I will be back. I'll just stay here. I'll just start talking, in fact, right now. Let's begin. We'll do like a little pre-start here. Just a little information about the New York State Global Regions, which is probably why you're watching this video, and very good possibility. Hopefully, if you're watching this live, you're taking the exam tomorrow afternoon at 1:15. And if that is where you are, a little bit of information about the exam itself. It's 50 multiple choice questions, 1 DBQ essay, and that DBQ essay will also have DBQ questions, and there'll be somewhere between 12 to 14 short answer questions that will go with that DBQ. You'll also have 1 thematic essay. So you will have 2 essays that you will have to write, a thematic essay and a document-based question, a DBQ essay. So it's going to be two essays you're going to have to write, the 50 multiple choice questions, and the short answers that will go with your DBQ. Today's Global Regions Review is going to focus mostly on the information that you will need for the exam. It's just going to be a quick review of everything you've learned the last 2 years, or whenever you took Global 1 and Global 2, which is predominantly a 2-year course throughout the state of New York. So what we're going to be doing in that review is we're going to actually work backwards, I think, this year. Usually I start from the beginning, Global 1, and this time I thought about it, I want to work backwards, because I think a lot of times teachers don't get to the more recent stuff. So we're going to get to the recent stuff, head towards the back. Again, if you're just joining me, please use the chat. Please use the comment bar if you have any questions. So I am not exactly sure how my chat is working. I'm right on 2 chats that I've got open, and hopefully we'll be getting stuff from those chats. So like I said, we're going to move backwards. I thought maybe we'd start talking about some environmental issues. So I have a couple of key things we're going to look at. We're going to talk about the ozone, acid rain, deforestation, desertification, the greenhouse effect, and then we can talk about some nuclear disasters as well, like Chernobyl. So one of the first things we want to look at, so where you might see something about the environment is humans' impact on the environment, the environment's impact on humans. You can use this as far as what we've done to create an environment that is different. For example, the ozone layer is when we've trapped greenhouse gases that can't escape. So it also goes back to our greenhouse gases. And then there was a whole, sorry, this is a little more confusing than I needed to make it. So 2 things here. We have greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are a trapping of warm air inside of the Earth's atmosphere, so that that warm air can't escape. If you've ever walked into a greenhouse in the middle of summer, it's sweltering, it's really hot, that's the same concept as greenhouse gases. So why do you need to know this for a Global Regions exam? They might ask you to talk about how humans have impacted the environment. One way we've impacted the environment is by pollution, which has led to greenhouse gases, the warming of our planet through greenhouse gases. We also, in the same aspect, as far as adding pollution, have created acid rain, which is exactly as it sounds. Rain that contains too much of a high acid in the rain itself, in the water that is falling on our earth. Obviously, acidic rain is not going to allow us to prosper and grow things properly. We also have put a hole in the ozone layer, which allows the sun's rays to come in harmful levels. We are supposed to get certain amounts of sun, but when we get it in harmful levels, it is no longer safe for us. So those are kind of pollutions that we've put out there, and what those effects have had on us. But we've also done other things to the environment. We've taken down our forests, which is called deforestation. So clear cutting, slash and burn, which is when you cut down trees, then you burn the whole landscape. And desertification. And desertification is a term that you would use when you're particularly talking maybe about like the Middle East, where or Africa. And the desert should be a certain size, like naturally a desert would occur. But as we use more and more resources, that desert gets bigger and bigger and bigger and expands more than it naturally should, because we use the resources like the water and take more from the area that is now depleting the desert. That's desertification. So those are all some environmental things you might see on the Regents exam. For those of you who are just joining us, I don't have information on the exam itself. I make guesswork. I don't have answers for the DBQ. I don't have answers for the thematic essay. I don't have answers for the multiple choice. This is just, I've been doing this for a few years, so I kind of can make some guesses on what I think the Regents may include. So that's environment stuff that we might see. This is a question that I think has a chance of being a Regents question, which is ethnic conflicts. I haven't seen this one in a little while, and I do enjoy having this one on there. And so what this is talking about groups of people that don't get along, and that when those groups don't get along, there's wars. And it's based on ethnicity. So it's not like World War I or World War II when there were, people, that countries were at war. These are ethnicities at war or religions at war. And the first ones that we're going to look at is the Palestinians fighting the Jewish people of Israel. And this is over control in the land in the Middle East. You can also use the Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland fighting for control of Northern Ireland. We can talk about the Serbs, the Croatians, and the Muslims fighting over the land in the Balkans, which is southeastern Europe. We can talk about the people of Tibet, where the Buddhist religion wants an independent government from China. So those are all ethnic groups that have issues with each other currently. There's lots more that we will get into a little bit here that are a little more in the past, not entirely, but we'll get into those in a little bit. Like I said, those of you who are just joining me, I've chosen to do this review a little bit backwards today. Usually I start from the beginning of history and try to get to today. This time I decided, hey, let's switch it around a little bit and let's start with the end and some themes and make it and try to get back as far as we can. We're about 4 minutes in, and we're looking to go until around 8 o'clock. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll be on for about an hour. So the other thing we're going to look at economic systems. There are three main types of economic systems. And economic systems is anything that you're producing and distributing, and we oftentimes here in the United States think of that as like buying and selling or a barter system, but it doesn't always have to be. So like I said, there are three main types of economic systems. There's the traditional economy, there's a market economy, and there's a command economy. Okay, a traditional economy is a bartering system where you want something, and your neighbor has something. So my neighbor is growing tomatoes and I need carrots. Wait, my neighbor, my neighbors are growing potatoes. I'm growing carrots. I need potatoes. My neighbor needs carrots. So we go and we share. Or not share. I give my neighbor some carrots. She gives me some potatoes. That is a bartering system. So that's a traditional economy. And we see that, like I said, in most farming economies of the beginning of time were bartering systems. What the next one is a market economy. This is mostly what the United States has, and this is the idea that individuals own their own business and they make their business decisions. And individuals determine the price of the item or the good, not the government. So we can add a lot of things in here, like capitalism would be a form of market economy. So capitalism is when the person who's making it is coming up with the price, they're coming up with how it's going to be bought and sold. That's what we are as the United States. We're a capitalist society. Another term that fits in here is laissez-faire government. Laissez-faire, and that means hands off. That means the government is going to have hands off, nothing to do with the economy. That's laissez-faire government. And again, that's another one that goes into that broad spectrum of market economy. We also use the free market. That's another term for this market economy, a free market where you get to pick and choose. So those are all kind of the same term. So capitalism, laissez-faire, hands-off economies, and free market are all basically a market economy. And again, that's when an individual owns the business and decides on the price. And then our next one is a command economy. And that's when the government is in control of what's being produced and all the decisions that are made. And the government is going to choose those prices. So some examples, the biggest one, of course, is communism. Communism is when the government controls all of those decisions. They're going to tell people what to make, how much they're going to charge for it, what you're going to be buying and selling. So it is the opposite of market economy. So those are our three main economic systems: a traditional economy, a market economy, and a command economy. So those are your three main types of economic systems. All right, and I mentioned before we were talking about ethnic differences. We're going to look sort of into that a little bit more. We're going to talk about some actual really big human rights violations, and a lot of those are going to be based on ethnicities. For those of you who are just joining us tonight, I am flipping the way I normally do this. I usually start teaching the review from the beginning of time, and we do our best to try to get to the end. We never do, just like probably most teachers, if they're in their school year, they don't always get from the beginning to the end. So we're going to go from the end, and go as much as we can from the beginning. So we're looking a little more into themes tonight as opposed to a timeline kind of structure. So right now we're looking at human rights violations. And that term kind of says it all. This is a violation amongst our human rights. And human rights are life, liberty, and property. And those were titled for us by a man named John Locke back in the 1600s. He's an Englishman. Giving you a little history here. So he's an Englishman. He comes up with the idea that, hey, governments have to protect our natural rights. So when we're looking now at more recent human rights violations, we know that human rights violations are going to put in a problem. They're going to put a stop to our natural rights as humans, so life, liberty, and property. And in this particular case, when we're talking about human rights violations, we're talking mostly about that first one, life. So when we're talking about human rights violations, we're talking about usually a genocide, which is a mass murdering of a group of people. And genocide is usually referring to an ethnic cleansing. So you're choosing to murder a group of people because they are different than you. So we're going to go through 6 of these. We're going to do it pretty quickly. You know, again, if you want more information, take a look on the internet. The first one is the Armenian genocide, and this is a genocide that took place during World War I, and it was the Turks, which are were part of the Ottoman Empire, and they killed about 1 million Armenians, which is a group of people in current day Armenia. And actually, Adolf Hitler is going to get many of his ideas for the Holocaust based on the Armenian massacre or the Armenian genocide. The Armenian government refuses to call it a genocide. Our next one, our second one, is the Ukrainian famine. And you may be saying, a famine? That's when people don't get enough food. How is a famine a human rights violation? Well, it's a human rights violation when the government who's in charge of that country is not doing anything to save the people from the famine that they're under. And so this one takes place just before World War II, when Joseph Stalin, the dictator of the Soviet Union, modern-day Russia, took food away and stopped the importation of any other food, which resulted in the deaths of 1 million people there in Russia, or in Ukraine. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union at the time. The next one is one that is probably the picture-perfect example of any human rights violations, and that is the Holocaust. And in the Holocaust, Adolf Hitler, the dictator of Nazi Germany, killed 6 million Jews systematically in World War II. You don't actually see that many questions about the Holocaust on the Regents exam, so I think that will probably give you enough information. The next one I've seen a few times as part of a DBQ question, and that's the Rhodesian genocide, or sorry, the Rwandan genocide, the Rwandan genocide, which is where you have the Hutus and the Tutsis, and this is in 1994. So many of you who are watching right now were just not born, but you were pretty close. That's how recent this is, 1994, and it was 1 million Tutsis were killed. And this very interesting backstory to this. One of these days, when you're bored, you should all watch Hotel Rwanda. But in this, the difference between the Hutus and the Tutsis is that when the French came into place, they actually put a difference on the Africans' skin color, and Rwanda is a country in Africa. They put a difference on the skin color, and they came up with those two names. So the French gave them the two names, and the Tutsis had power for a very long time, and when they lost power, the Hutus had decided to kind of try to systematically, well, it wasn't even systematic, they just started to kill them, for the harsh treatment that they had received while they were in power. Very bizarre time in history, and what happened is the UN did go in, but they did almost nothing to support, because the UN, the United Nations, has actually like very little to no military power. Anyway, so that's the Rwandan genocide. Cambodia is another one, and Luc Pot was the ruler of Cambodia, and he killed about 2 million people of his own nation, and that one's recent also. I don't actually have a date written down. That's my mistake, not yours. Yugoslavia, and this is when Slobodan Milosevic, he was the Serbian ruler of Yugoslavia, who was attacking non-Serbian people, mostly Albanian, who were living in Yugoslavia. So those are just some of many examples of some more recent World War I on human rights violations. Some things to know about human rights violations if you are you go to against a court in The Hague for crimes against humanity if you are found that that is the case. So that is, The Hague is in the Netherlands, so there is an international crime place. So if you commit human rights atrocities, that's where you end up going. All right, so again, I'm moving backwards today. So I'm gonna start with the collapse of communism, but I think actually let's do kind of communism in general. Communism and the Cold War. We'll kind of combine that together. So what we're gonna talk about here with the Cold War is after World War II, I'm just trying to decide exactly where I want to go. After World War II, two main countries gained power. One, the United States. It's one of the only times you get to talk about the United States, by the way, in your regions. Okay, one is the United States. The other is the USSR, which is Russia, the Soviet Union. Those two countries are the main superpowers. They're extremely powerful. They also, previous to this time, had gotten along pretty well. But it was also that time of the enemy, and my enemy is my friend. So they got along with each other because they both decided to hate the same group, particularly Hitler. So World War II ends. These two world superpowers are now, they don't have a shared enemy. They just get to do whatever they want. And they decide to take where they are and just build up on many different levels. And the difference between these two countries is relatively small as far as the foundations of their government. And the biggest one is that one is a free nation, or a capitalist society. Again, going into that economy that we were talking about. That's the United States. And Russia, or the Soviet Union, is going to be a communist country. And there's a difference in the economies, but there's also a difference in the form of government. The United States is going to have a lot of freedoms, and the Soviet Union is going to be historically closed off and not given a lot of freedoms. They're going to be truly capitalist in both their economy and in their government. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by, look, someone wanted to say hello. There's Jasper, that's the cat, okay. All right, Miss Hamlet has got a question. Okay, yes, okay, she is asking about the exam tomorrow and what do I think the essays will be? The $1,000,000 question. If only I knew. I don't know. I do make pretty good guesses, and what I just went over, the human rights violations, I think it's about time for one of those essays. I wish I could tell you more, but I'm just a history teacher, like your history teacher. I don't get the answers. I don't know what's going on, but I do think that's a good shot. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I always think the summer regencies are harder to predict. I also think maybe they might be a little easier. Don't hold me to that. Maybe. So I hope they are. I hope you guys all do really well tomorrow. Yeah. Maybe revolutions. I don't know. I wish I could tell you guys more about what I think. Maybe as we continue this review, I'll come up with some more really good essay ideas that will be a possibility. But again, I don't know the Regents topics. But keep asking questions, and like I said, I'll give you my best to make some guesses on what I think it might be. All right. So again, we're talking about the Cold War. This could be a thematic essay. I haven't seen it in a little while, and that's how I guess, is I look at past regencies, and they tend to do replays. The Regents Board replays a lot of their essays, so I haven't seen the Cold War in a while, so possibly could be. It was part of the DBQ, so maybe not in June. So after World War II, we had our two main superpowers, right? And we have those two forms of government, and they want to be the very best, right? So if you've got like your best friend, your friend who's you're very competitive, maybe they're not your best friend, but your biggest competitor. You want to always be outdoing that competitor, right? The Olympics is going on right now. Michael Phelps is awesome for the fact that every other person who's doing the butterfly, he's this good, but in order for them to win, they have to be that good. They have to be better than Michael Phelps. They have to be better than the very best. And that's what goes on during the Cold War. That's what the Cold War is all about, is that every time the United States gets better, the Soviet Union has to get better. And so every time the Soviet Union gets better, the United States has to get better. So just like Michael Phelps in the Olympics right now, every time he gets better, so do all his competitors, and then he has to get better. And then that's why we're breaking world records all the time during these Olympics, because everyone's really trying to compete. But when we're looking at the world platform, you may be saying, well, what the heck are they competing against? Well, they're competing against who's going to get to space first. Oh, well, Russia got to space first. So we're going to be the first, man on the moon. So then they build this up. And then we can also talk, this is the scary one, okay? The United States drops the first atomic bomb. Russia's like, the United States has an atomic bomb, so do we. We want one too. And then the United States, well, if you have an atomic bomb, then we want 2 atomic bombs. And then if you have 2 atomic bombs, well, then we're gonna have 3 atomic bombs. And that's an arms race. And that is huge, because then you get to a point where we've had all these bombs, and now you're at like a super scary level in the world, and they then have to lower those, which we'll get to in a second. Let's see, so we talked about the arms, we talked about the space. Those are kind of the 2 big things that the Soviets and the United States are really going to compete against, are those 2 things. Let's see, do I really want to get to the end of communism already? Oh, and also during communism, so not only do we have the United States and Russia, but after World War II, the Allies, so the United States, Great Britain, France, and Russia get Germany. They get all of Germany. What they do is they divide Germany into 4 quarters. Again, envision that, right? They divide it into 4 quarters. Well, the free countries, the United States, Great Britain, and France, take 3/4 of that country of Germany. And the other 1/3 is the Soviet Union's. So one chunk of Germany is now controlled by the Soviet Union, but just 1/3 of it, and it's the only communist part in that entire country. And then to make this matters even worse, is they take a teeny tiny section of Germany, and that's Berlin, the capital, and they split Berlin into 4 sections. The Allied, the English, the British, the United States, and France get 3/4 of it. The Soviet Union gets the other 1/4. And so we have a one tiny little section of Berlin that is communist. It's East Berlin. The other thing that we want to talk about with the Cold War is that it's an iron curtain, and there's containment. So we're going to do 2 things right here. We're going to talk about containment. We're going to talk about an iron curtain. They're related to each other. They're important to understand. So containment is the idea that we don't want communism to spread. So can we understand? Okay, fine. We're not going to stop communism. It's going to exist. There's only so much we can do about it. But we don't want it to grow. The Soviet Union was huge. Take a moment, look it up on the internet, see how ginormous the Soviet Union was. We don't want that to go any further. So containment was keep it where it was, keep it where it is. And that breaking point that we don't want it to go any further is the Iron Curtain. We are not allowing communism to spread any further than that Iron Curtain. This idea of containment gives us 2, count them, 1, 2 military police actions. Take note, I didn't call them wars. It's Korea and the Vietnam War. Conflict, not wars. We haven't been to war since World War II. Okay, so because of containment, the United States gets involved in 2 wars in Asia. The first one in Korea. You know it, I'm going to talk about the Olympics again, right? So you watch the Olympics, you're going to see 2 Koreas, a North Korea and a South Korea, a free country of Korea and a People's Republic of Korea. That North one is a communist country because containment didn't 100% work. Didn't 100% fail either, because the entire country would be communist then, I guess. But Korea is still split 50-50. North Korea is a communist country. This is stemming left over from the Cold War, when the United States and its allies were trying to keep the Soviet powers and communism where they were. The other one, our second one that we want to look at, is Vietnam, the Vietnam military police action, whatever you may want to call it. This takes place in Vietnam, French Indochina, as it was called at the time. This is in the 60s. And in Vietnam, it again was split. You had the North Vietnam and the South Vietnamese. And in this case, the United States goes in to help its ally France, who used to control this area, and they're going to help France contain communism. This was a pretty big failure. It didn't work as far as the term containment goes. Vietnam is 100% communist to this day, so it was not particularly successful at containment. I noticed that I've said the word containment a lot of times, and every time I'm putting my hands out because I want you to think, every time you hear containment, that they are holding them back. It's all about containing the communists where they already are. So they're not going to move any further into Western Europe. They're not going to move into Asia. So the United States and its allies, particularly England and France, are going to do their best to contain them in Europe and as well in Vietnam and Korea. Again, successful to certain degrees. All right, so now how do we go into success with this? Or how does the Soviet Union collapse? And before I continue, I got a couple new viewers out there. We are doing today's review a little bit backwards. We're going to start from more modern times and work back into history, as opposed to usually I start from the beginning and try to get to the end. But I think then we miss a lot. So we're going to work backwards. So right now we're talking about the collapse of the Soviet Union. And again, this is at the end of the Cold War. We're looking at in the late 80s, early 1990s. And that it starts with something called glasnost. And this was kind of a openness. And in fact, I believe, I don't speak Russian, but I believe glasnost actually translates into openness. And the idea of glasnost is that there will be openness between the United States and Russia. So there was a hotline installed, and the leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, and of the Soviet Union, and our leader, Ronald Reagan, were talking to each other like civil human beings, and they were doing all this sort of stuff to have this sense of openness. And it was showing that the Soviet Union was willing to take steps towards democracy. And another term, so glasnost, openness, steps towards democracy. And another one is perestroika. And perestroika, I don't know what that translates into, is a kind of a loosening of the economy in Russia. So he starts with perestroika. He starts to take their communist command economy that we just did a little while ago, and he starts to have it become more of a market economy. So again, that's when the government is going to go from controlling everything in the economy to controlling a lot less. So they're not going to maybe tell you what you're buying or what you're making or how much something's going to cost. Maybe the market will decide how much something is going to cost. And when that's, you know, when I'm talking about how much something is going to cost, here's my cell phone. It's like 800 years old. Most of you would look at this and be like, I'm not paying $5 for that piece of junk, right? Well, that's because the market has decided that this cell phone is not worth a lot of money. And that's what we're talking about with the people choosing the market. So we, the people of the United States, choose how much we think the cell phone should be, because if we're not going to buy it if it's too much, right? So we decide kind of the price of things like that. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the economy. So again, perestroika is the changing of the way Mikhail Gorbachev is going to run the economy in the Soviet Union, and glasnost is going to be an openness that he has with the United States and with his own people. And then that takes us to a man named Boris Yeltsin, and Boris Yeltsin becomes the first democratically elected leader in Russia's history entirely. And we're talking about like 1992 or 3 or something in the early 90s. And so that's kind of the fall. That's the end. That marks the end of the communist moment in Russia, in the Soviet Union. Blah 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 blah. So that's in the Soviet Union. We want to talk a little bit here real quick about what happens. We talked about Germany and how 1/4 of Germany was communist. And that's going to take some time too. So the biggest thing that we symbolize there is the Berlin Wall. And this is a symbol of the Cold War. And this is a wall that goes through Berlin, and the people can't cross it, because that's, if you cross the Berlin Wall, you're going into capitalist free market, you know, society, United States and England and Russia, yikes, and France. I know my stuff, I promise. And that symbol gets turned down, and it is as much a symbol as it is an actual wall. And once we see that, we see the final collapse of the communist government in Germany. These are tied incredibly close together with the collapse in Russia, because they're ultimately controlled by the same people. So once it collapses in the Soviet Union, this is a chunk, kind of, we call them satellite states of the Soviets. And there's many, of course, there's like 8 million. Yugoslavia is a Soviet satellite country. So it was controlled by the Soviet Union. And then, so once that falls, in 1989, Germany is then unified as one nation under God. No, that's us. That's our flag. Okay, we got it. All right, so that's the end of the Cold War. So again, you're just joining us. We're going backwards in time. We're starting early and ending late. Oh, here's a good one. So a couple other things that happened after World War II. So we have our communism, that's big. We have our Cold War, right? Those are all tied together. There's another giant thing that starts to happen during or after World War II. One of them is called Zionism. And Zionism was a movement that had been going on longer than World War II, but we started to take it really seriously at the end of World War II. And Zionism means a search for a Jewish homeland. So, think for a second. What would make Europeans think it was important to find Jewish people a home after World War II? If you guessed that it's because of the Holocaust in Germany, give yourself a gold star. Absolutely. Many Europeans and Americans as well believed that, wow, that Holocaust was awful. We should probably do something to make the Jewish people feel a little bit better. So they came up with this brilliant idea. Let's give them Israel. It's their homeland. It's the birth of their religion. This is brilliant. So the powers that be in Europe and North America give the Jewish people Israel. Sounds great. However, the people who are living in Israel, the Palestinians, were not such a big fan of that. They hated it. And in fact, it was such a bad idea to them that within 6 days of the creation of Israel, Israel was attacked. But to tell you how much the Israelis kick hiney, they won an attack. 6 days after their creation, they won a war. But this ultimately, this idea of giving the Jewish people a homeland actually kind of led us to the current issues, many, not all, many of the current issues that we have in the Middle East today. Again, not all of our issues in the Middle East can be completely directed to the creation of Israel, but it does keep the United States and our allies as a stronghold in the Middle East forever and always, because Israel is a huge, we are their best friends. We're a huge ally of Israel, so we're going to be in the Middle East forever in order to protect this creation of Israel. I see. You see a question here. Yeah, I'm seeing that suggestion that that there might be a political, non-political essay, Cold War or Geographic Features. Again, I don't know what this could be. I don't know what the essays will be. I think it's very possible. The Geographic Features was June's essay, so I don't know if that will be again. Political and non-political ones, that's a very good possibility. We can go through those right now if that's something that we're concerned with. So, there's lots of types of revolutions, but let me go through the essays that I've seen. And so one essay that I've seen has been asking about non-political revolutions. When we're thinking of non-political revolutions, there's kind of 3 that come to my mind. One is the Neolithic Revolution. The other is the Scientific Revolution. We could also probably include like the Industrial Revolution in there as well. But I'm going to say the Scientific Revolution. And then the third being the Green Revolution, which is very much the opposite of what we in 2016 think of as the Green Revolution. It's the opposite of our Green Revolution. So those are the 3 things I've seen as a non-political revolution. So the first one, the Neolithic Revolution or the Agrarian Revolution, was when we as humans decided, I don't know if we decided, but we stopped hunting and gathering and began to farm and domesticate animals. So the Agrarian Revolution or Neolithic Revolution is when we stopped being hunters and gatherers. So we stopped moving, we stopped being nomadic, to staying in one spot and becoming farmers, having livestock. We started domesticating pigs and cows and chickens and all that good stuff. And we started to also domesticate our plants as well. So that's the Agrarian or the Neolithic Revolution. That's, oh my gosh, long. That's the first thing you learn in Global 1. Okay, so a long time ago. The second one I talked about was the Scientific Revolution. That's when we decided that maybe not everything in our world could be answered by G-O-D, God, okay? So in the past, and whether it be, it doesn't matter what God, okay? But in the past, everything that was done was answered by a god or gods. So, Mount Vesuvius erupted back in ancient Rome. Well, that's because the gods were mad at them. Or there was a hurricane because the gods were mad at them. So then people started to say, no, that volcano didn't erupt because God's mad at you. It's because the pressure of the magma, and they have these reasons. And that hurricane happened because the wind over the Atlantic Ocean was that's how a hurricane happens. And this started to get taken really seriously, that like there's reasons, and not only are there reasons, but there's a method that you should probably know for your science Regents, of which you go through a hypothesis, and then you test it, and the whole scientific method, and you come up with your results, and you analyze, and you discover. And that all happens during the Scientific Revolution. And one of the key things that also happens in there is Nicholas Copernicus comes up with the Copernicus model. And that's the idea that this is the center of the universe and it's the sun, and all the planets revolve around the sun. I hope you paid attention. You probably learned that in like 3rd grade science, right? Well, previous to Copernicus coming up with this idea, this was not what we thought. We thought that the Earth was the center of the universe and everything, including the sun, revolved around us. So that was one of the biggest things that came out of there, because that meant that we were God, was not the center of the universe. So this was a huge issue. And also we even came up with, Isaac Newton came up with the idea of gravity. That's what holds us all together. So it's not God that holds us all together. No, it was gravity. So there was some issues there with church issues. But that's one that I've seen on a thematic essay. Brian also has a question about the essays. I don't know them. I don't know what they're going to be. So I'm just doing my guess. And Ms. Hamlet here had seen somewhere that there was a chance that it would maybe be on some non-political revolutions, the Cold War, or geography. So we're doing a quick little talk about those. But yeah, I can't give any specifics. I don't have them. I'm just an ordinary history teacher in upstate New York. I don't have any special powers, unfortunately. So what was that? Oh, so that was the scientific revolution. And so one of the other ones I've seen on there is the Green Revolution, and that's actually one I skipped over before, so that kind of worked out really well. And we're looking at 1960s. It actually stems from science that was discovered in World War II. And they realized that, hey, if we take some of these chemicals, like the stuff they use to make atomic bombs, and put it on our plants, they'll grow really well. There is an issue with that. We're figuring this out now. But so that's the basic idea, is that we can improve our methods of farming by using modern pesticides and modern fertilizers and increase our yields. And the idea was really that in India, Africa, and South America, that this would increase the yields of food, thus for decreasing starvation. I could really get onto a soapbox here. It doesn't quite work. In fact, the people who make the money are the people who own the chemicals. But I am going to do my best to not show my side on that. But that is the green. That's the Green Revolution. So it's the idea of increasing pesticides and fertilizers that they're leftover chemicals from World War II. Pour those onto our foods, feed them to our animals, GMO our seeds, and we'll be able to feed millions of people. Kind of works. It's a boom. What does end up happening is that food is not necessarily nutritious. Again, I'm not going to get into a soapbox. I'm going to move on from that. But those are the 3 non-political revolutions that I've seen that have been previously on thematic essays. So the Neolithic Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, and the Green Revolution. I'm going to include one more in there. That's the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution starts in England. It's the idea that we're going to start making a lot of stuff. So there's going to be cotton mills, and there's going to be factories, and they're going to mass produce things, and that's the Industrial Revolution. A lot of technology comes out of the Industrial Revolution, like the assembly line comes out of the Industrial Revolution, and that's, say, 1800s, right around the American Civil War. But don't think about that, because that's the wrong exam. All right. Okay, nothing else there. Revolutions, more in general. French Revolution. I think it's only going to be a DBQ if it's anything. know that the French Revolution happens because of the American Revolution. We give them the idea because we're awesome. So we give them the French the idea to have a revolution to gain liberties. They're fighting against their king for land and bread and power. And the peasants are going to revolt. This is where we want to go with this, actually. This is good. I figured out what I want to say. So almost all of our revolutions include this shape. This is the pyramid of power. Okay, and what this means is that the pyramid of power puts the people who are at the top have the most power, and the people at the bottom have the smallest amount of power. But it's an opposite pyramid in the fact that the people who have the power, there's a lot less of them than the people who are at the bottom, where there's a lot more of them. And that's what we see in the French Revolution, is that we have a very, very, very large third class. So the first class would be the nobles, and the second class would be the clergy, the priests, and the third class, oh, I can kind of do it, there we go. The third class, it's probably some kind of weird, shouldn't do that kind of, who knows. That third class is going to be the peasants, and they're going to have most of the power, or they're going to have none of the power, but they're going to be the most people. So once they realize that, hey, wow, the United States came up with this great idea, let's have a revolution, they're going to go against the clergy and the king and the nobles and gain the power. They do this through forcing their government to see them in a power sense. They have something called the tennis court oath, where they refuse to leave, and you'll have to look it up to get more information on it, because I don't want to spend my entire time on the French Revolution. Let me go through. I'll go through my notes to see what else I want to talk about as far as revolutions. Revolution. Zionism, talked about that. Oh, I'm way up here. Sorry, Industrial Revolution, French Revolution. Okay, what do I want to talk about? Just talked about Louis the 16th. And then after they have their revolution, a man named Napoleon comes to power, not Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, not Napoleon Dynamite, Napoleon Bonaparte. And he conquers lots and lots of land in Europe, making the French feel very powerful and having a lot of nationalism. Okay, as far as other revolutions go, we can say the Latin American Revolution. There are several of them. You always want to think of this sense of power. Have people at the top having all the power, people on the bottom having very little, but most of the people being in the bottom. Most of these South American or Latin American revolutions are race-based revolutions, meaning that there were, at the time, there was a belief that if you were from Europe, you were at the top, and you were from Europe, you would be better than the people who were on the bottom, who may have been native, they may have been slaves, and so this is a race-based sense of power. So we have a couple of leaders that come out of this race-based power. So they're coming from the bottom, they're going to try to gain power to the top. A man named Simon Bolivar. He creates a country. He actually creates several, but Bolivia is named after him. Toussaint Louverture in oh my gosh, not Puerto Rico. I'm gonna have to come back to y'all. I don't know why I forgot where Toussaint Louverture is from, but I did. Who else? Those are the two. All right, what else as far as our revolutions? Those are some good ones. I don't know. Okay, going back to my backwards study. We're just finishing what was like after World War II. What are some of the results? So we talked about the Cold War. We talked about Israel. Okay, we also can talk about the actual impact after World War II. We talked about crimes against humanity before. Those Nazis who committed crimes against humanity were put on trial, and they were called the Nuremberg trials. They were put on trial. These trials are still going on. We still have Nuremberg trials against Nazis today. And I don't mean like neo-Nazis. I mean actual like 95-year-old men going on trial for war crimes against humanity. And this was held in the Hague, the International Court in the Netherlands. And these men, mostly men, put on trial for war crimes against humanity. So those are the Nuremberg trials. Also, after World War II, we create the UN, the United Nations. The idea of the UN is to stop any world wars from happening from World War II on. And you may be surprised, but they're actually relatively successful. I say they're relatively successful because even though we're in a lot of wars, the war that scares us is the fact that we're very capable of some major nuclear wars, and we haven't had one of those. Good for us. So even though we have been in and out of wars since World War II, or conflict since World War II, we've actually never gotten to a world war, because that's going to end really badly. We're all just going to blow each other up. Wow, it's almost 8 o'clock at night. That's something to give you a nightmare with. And so we create the UN after World War II to make sure that this World War II or World War III never happens again. Okay. So that's that. World War II, again, going backwards in time. World War II major events we want to know about during World War II. There's usually not a ton of questions on World War II, so I'll be quick. One starts with the invasion of Poland. Once Hitler invades Poland, all bets are off. The United States, everybody gets really involved in that. Pearl Harbor is when the Japanese attack the United States in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, bringing the United States into war. D-Day is a day that was planned. It just means the day or doomsday, that the Allied forces are going to invade France. That doesn't sound right, but that's because the Germans occupied France, so they're going to invade German-occupied France and try to get the Germans out. A lot of death, but very successful. The dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States drops 2 atomic bombs, one on Hiroshima, one on Nagasaki, one on August 6th, one on August 9th, in 1942, 49. 48. I don't know the year. 48, I think. Nope. Now I've decided it's 47. Definitely got it right on the 6th and the 9th. I should have just left it at that. So then Germany or Japan does surrender shortly after the second atomic bomb, as would I if someone just dropped 2 atomic bombs on my country. And then, of course, what we already talked about, which is the Holocaust. 6 million Jews and 6 million non-Jews were also killed during the Holocaust. And again, like we talked about, it's a example of genocide or systematic killing off of people and their human rights violations. As far as what led to World War II, well, what led to World War II was World War I. World War I, when it ended, was not ended successfully. There was a lot of loose ends that were not tied up. Germany was forced to pay really high war reparations, which is payment for the war, leaving Germany in a depression, a Great Depression. And because of that, they were really sad and cranky. And when you're sad and cranky, you're willing to listen to crazy people. And they listened to Adolf Hitler. And then once Hitler got to power, he started doing lots of things. He starts building up his military, which was against the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. He started taking the Rhineland, which was an area that used to belong to Germany. He started taking borders with Austria, his homeland. That's where he's actually from. He's not German. And he also started to take the land of Czechoslovakia. And what happens is that Hitler is appeased, which means that the Allied forces decide, okay, you did all those bad things, Mr. Hitler, but it's okay, it's all right, don't do it anymore, don't do it anymore, honey, don't do that. And then he keeps doing these stupid things, and it gets to the point where they have to do something. That something they have to do ends up being World War II. And then, like I said, Hitler invades Poland in 1939, and then we have our war officially. Also on the Asian side of World War II, because Japan, don't forget Japan's involved in World War II. They're friends with Germany and Italy. Don't forget Italy too. They're over there. And Japan starts taking over Korea, Manchuria, which is part of northeastern China, and Southeast Asia in order to gain some of their natural resources that they have, like coal and iron. And they actually conduct something called the Rape of Nanking, which is a brutal event in which the Japanese start raping and killing civilians and which are non-military people within the city of Nanking. And it's considered a huge major human rights violation. And super brutal. Like really, they did some things that were really very equal to the Nazis as far as human rights violations. Very weird stuff. Ms. Hamlet asks another question. How many multiple choice questions do I have to get right to get a 65 or 70? Oh, tough question. Okay, so there's 50 multiple choice. What happens is there's a sliding scale. And what I suggest if you really want to see what one of these looks like is go on to just search global Regents and go to the states page. You'll actually see where past Regents exams are and look for the conversion chart. What happens is that when a teacher grades your exam, they grade your multiple choice. Let's say you get 25 out of 50, so you get a 25, okay? But then they grade your short answer questions. They could be anywhere from probably 12 to 14 short answer questions. Let's assume you get them right. So let's say there's 10, because I don't like math. So let's say you get 10 of them right. You get 25 multiple choice questions right. That brings you up to a 35. This is where your sliding scale or conversion chart that you can find on the internet comes into play. With that conversion chart, the teachers then grade your essays, and you can get a 0 to a 5. Let's say you get a 3 on both essays. Those are always what I kind of strive for, right? Get that 3. So that gives you, if you get a 3 on both exams, that gives you a 6. What will happen is that 35 will then get into that conversion chart that I'm telling you to find online, and that conversion chart will then show you what your grade will be. I would say you probably, in order to be relatively comfortable spot, probably need to get 35 questions right on the multiple choice. It's a little over half. There's 25 questions. That will give you a little over half, but it is imperative that you not get any of those short answer questions wrong. Okay, read those questions several times. Answer exactly what the test is asking for. That should be a relatively easy 12 to 14 points that will just get added right onto your multiple choice question. And like I said, I can't give you an answer on what the score will look like because that changes every single year. And the conversion chart for this year is not out, but you can certainly look at what the conversion chart looked like for last year. So I hope that helps. And again, you can just find that at the state website. So if you just go to, just search on Google or Yahoo or whatever you use, just search Global Regents past exams or Global Regents, you'll see the state's website. Pop that up, look at the past exams, and you'll see the scoring keys. And then that will give you the best example of how they calculate these scores. It is just about 8 o'clock at night. I appreciate everyone who swung by. Can you give us an example of those questions? I'm assuming multiple choice questions. Sure, I can. And really the best way to get more on this, if you are looking for Regents, questions, examples, two things. Like I just said, if you go to the states page, you'll actually be able to look at all the past exams, and they have all the answer keys right there. So all the past exams are all there. I mean, all the way back to like 1990 or something like that. They go back forever. And the answers are there. So you can go and look at those, or you can go to regentsprep.org, which I'm going to look at right now. If you go to regentsprep.org and click on the global link, and of course this website always gets swamped the day before an exam because everyone's busily studying. Oh, I clicked on now, and you'll go click on the global regions, and from there you will see. This is probably gonna be backwards. You can't see anything. Never mind. I won't. Oh no, I can. Ooh. Nope, you don't see anything. I thought that would, whoa, hey, look at that, it's like a mirror. Okay, I'm focusing. You'll get topics from there that you can look at, and each of those topics, mine won't come up, server's going cuckoo already. Okay, so each of the topics are there: belief systems, change and turning points, conflicts, golden ages. If you click on each of those things, oh, yeah, oh, so writing the essays, writing questions. You mean for the DBQ, Mr. Richardson, I'm assuming. Okay, yes. Same thing, let's go to that same website. If you click on, let's say, human rights, oh, I clicked on geography. We'll do that one instead because that's what I clicked on. Oh, it's going so slowly. But if you go onto those different topics, you'll be able to look at past DBQs, and they'll actually go and explain different things, and they'll give you things to talk about and to look at. And that's, again, I can't make any major guesses on what those X amount of questions are going to be. Those are going to be the questions that they might have a map. If you took the Regents exam this June 2016, there was like 3 maps. One was actually of Germany that we were just talking about, the split of Germany. And that's a DBQ question. Those are the X amount of questions that you might see. So that's what so with those X amount of questions, you just want to go and practice DBQs. And like I said, regentsprep.org has all of those questions that you could be looking at, and they actually have a section for DBQs. Go on there, read through them. They give you the answers. And the same state website that I was telling you about, just searching Regents, Global Regents exams, take you to the New York State website, and you'll actually have past Regents's, past DBQs. Read them. Take a look at them. They give you the answers. They give you the questions. They're available to you. These are, at this point, they're not blocked from you. So you're welcome as a student to take a look at all those past Regents exams. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is after 8 o'clock at night, past my witching hour. I do have to get moving, but I do assume that many of you watching are taking an exam tomorrow afternoon, so I wish you all the very best of luck. I will, if you keep leaving some posts, I will do my best to get to them a little bit later and leave some comments and send you guys to some websites. But that's what we got for now. Thank you. So again, there's lots of other reviews out there. I got, I think 2 or 3 that I've done in the past. And if you haven't already, check out Hiphu's history. He's 10 times better than I am, or than I'll ever be. So check him out. He does amazing Regents reviews. He also has videos on how to write a DBQ, how to write a thematic essay. He rocks. His name is Hip Hughes History. So check him out on YouTube. I think you'll really like him. So thank you all for watching, and good luck tomorrow. Bye.